So I started investing back in 2014, and trust me when I say this, I've made my fair share of mistakes over the past 10 years. In today's video, I want to share with you guys, if I had to start it all over again and started investing today, this is exactly what I would do. I'm going to be talking about where exactly I'd put my money, the type of investments I would be making, and also the different accounts I would be using as well. As of today, there is approximately $1.3 trillion of credit card debt in just the US alone. And if you look at what the average credit card interest rate is, right now it's hovering around 25%. So a little fun fact for you, that means on average, the US consumer is paying roughly $325 billion in credit card interest. This would be my number one goal and where I would place every single dollar that I could afford to put to it to get rid of that high interest debt. Now here's exactly why I would pay the high interest debt off first before even thinking about investing. And that is guaranteed returns. Now, what I mean by that is like I mentioned earlier, the average credit card interest rate is sitting at around 25%. So every dollar that you're paying off of credit card debt is a guaranteed return of 25%. And let me tell you this, nowhere in the stock market are you getting a guaranteed return of 25%. So I want to reiterate that for you guys to make sure this point is getting across. Every single dollar you put towards that high interest debt is getting that guaranteed return of whatever that interest rate is because you're paying that debt off. And when you pay that debt off, that interest can no longer accrue on that amount of money. Now you'll hear different pieces of advice of what people consider high interest debt. For me, I generally like to say anything 5% or above, I tend to focus on paying off and getting rid of as long as it's not a mortgage or some sort of real estate investment. Alright, so once I had all my ducks in order and I had all my high interest debt gone, completely paid for, that moves me on to the next step, and that would be focusing on my retirement accounts. Now, the reason why I would start applying money into these retirement accounts first is because these are tax advantage accounts. I'm going to be saving money on my taxes by simply investing in these accounts. Now, looking at the basics here, there are really two types of retirement accounts. You have your traditional accounts, which are your 401ks, your IRAs, and then on the other side, you have your Roths. That would be your Roth 401ks or your Roth IRAs. Now, if we go back and look at the traditional accounts where I'm talking about your 401k with your employer or a traditional IRA you can open up with any major brokerage out there. On these accounts, you actually pay your taxes later. So these are tax deferred accounts. So this is money that comes out of your paycheck and goes into a different account before you pay taxes on that money. Now, if you look at the Roth side of things, the Roths work a little bit different. So this is after-tax money that is going into these separate accounts. And the benefit with putting after-tax money into your Roths is that this money does grow tax-free. The Roths are my personal favorite type of investing accounts out there. Now, for these tax advantage accounts, for both the traditional as well as the Roths, there are contribution limits that limits you the amount of money you can put into these types of accounts. Now, as of 2024, when I'm recording this video, the current limits for traditional accounts, this is not including your 401k, this is only including IRAs and Roth IRAs. If you are 50 and under, you can contribute up to $7,000. And if you are over 50, you can contribute up to $8,000 in your personal retirement accounts. Now, for 401ks and Roth 401ks, this contribution limits are a bit different because this is usually with an employer. As of 2024, the contribution limits for these accounts are $23,000. Now, when it comes to the amount of money that I would earn, typically most Americans out there are not able to fully fund their 401k of the $23,000. And then on top of that, being able to fully fund their Roth IRA or IRA with an additional $7,000. That'd be roughly $30,000 going into investments every single year just by maxing those accounts. And let's be real here, most people probably can't afford that, especially in today's age. So if it was me, my first full focus would be if my 401k offered me a company match, I would put that amount of money in there first. So if I got a 2% match on the first, let's call it $4,000, I invested into my 401k, I would put that $4,000 into that retirement account that I have with my company. Next up, my main focus would be on maxing out my Roth IRA. I would do whatever I could to get that full $7,000 invested into my Roth IRA to get that fully funded for the year. Now, going back to the 401k here for a second, I mentioned putting in up to the max of whatever my company would offer me as a match. If I wanted to invest any additional money, it would all determine on how my 401k was set up, what type of investments are in there for me to choose from, and also what the fee structures look like on those investments inside the 401k, because some 401ks out there just simply aren't the greatest type of investments to invest in. Now, after I matched the amount of money to go into my 401k for my company's match, and after I fully funded my Roth IRA, this is where I'd put my money next. Next up, I would open a taxable brokerage account. So basically, this is money that has already been taxed. It has hit my checking account and is sitting in my checking account waiting for me to do something with it. What I can do is I can take that money sitting in my checking account and I can transfer that over to my taxable brokerage account. Now, the great part about a taxable brokerage account is there are no limits on the amount of money that you can contribute. So if you're a high individual earner, you can fund a lot of the extra dollars that you can't put inside your retirement accounts into your taxable brokerage. Now, as far as brokerage accounts go out there are a lot to choose from today. Some of my personal favorites are Vanguard, Fidelity, and Public. I have all of my retirement accounts with Vanguard. My taxable brokerage account is with Fidelity, and I also have a taxable brokerage account with Public, as well as some cash sitting in their high yield savings account. There will be links down below to all of those brokerages. The Fidelity and Vanguard are not affiliate links. The Public is an affiliate link if you guys want to support the channel and try out Public today. Now, let's get into what type of investments I would be purchasing inside these accounts. Did you know that 94% of US fund managers underperformed the S&P 500 over the past 20 years? Think about that for a second. These are the guys that dedicate their lives into picking stocks. They go to school for it. They look at the stock market every single day, and for 20 years consistently, they cannot outperform the S&P 500. That goes to say something right there about picking stocks. Now, don't get me wrong, I like picking stocks and I have fun investing in the stock market, but majority of my income sits in one single type of investment: index funds. See, when you're picking stocks, you're having to read financial statements and see how earnings are going for certain companies and try to project on what the economy is going to be doing over the next 5 years. Trust me, it's kind of a headache. To where if there was an investment vehicle out there where you could just sit back, transfer your money in, never have to look at the account for 30 years, open up that account and see that now that you're a millionaire, that's why I love index funds. It's a super passive way to invest in the stock market, but yet you're still getting average market returns consistently year over year. Now, when it comes to actually buying the investment, this would be my choice. I'm looking for something that is tracking either the overall stock market or tracking the S&P 500. And if you're not quite sure what the S&P 500 is, basically it is an index that is made up of the top 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. Now, there are two different ETFs that I own personally that cover both of these. There is the one that tracks the overall stock market, and that is known as VTI, or Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund. And this is made up of roughly over 4,000 different stocks inside this ETF. So when you go buy one share of VTI, your money is getting separated through over 4,000 different companies. And if I was wanting to go the S&P 500 route, what I would do is I would simply buy an ETF known as VOO or VOO. This is the Vanguard S&P 500 Index Fund. What I would do is I would have a mixture of both of them. Right now, currently what I do is in my retirement accounts is mostly fully in VTI, and then my taxable brokerage accounts is mostly in VOO. And then I'd also probably sprinkle a little bit of international in there, and another ETF that I like to use is known as VXUS. I wouldn't have as much of my portfolio in something like VXUS, but what that does for me is that does give me some exposure to the international market. All right, guys, so I have two other types of investments that I want to discuss in today's video. But first, before we get into that, all I want to ask is that if you hit that like button, that would really help out the video and the overall channel if you guys are getting value from this video. All right, so far what I've shared with you guys, if I was to start investing today, the first step I would do is start paying off my high yield interest debt. Next up, I would start investing in my tax advantage retirement accounts. With money I had left over that, I would then move into my taxable brokerage account. Inside all of those accounts, I would be buying typical market tracking index funds or ETFs. I mentioned a few of my favorites, VTI and VOO. Next up, let's get into my all-time favorite investment, and that's real estate. Now, real estate investments have been a long cornerstone of financial success, with approximately 90% of millionaires are attributing their wealth in part to real estate holdings. Now, there are many different ways you can invest in real estate, but if I was starting today, my first focus would be what's known as house hacking. In layman's terms, house hacking is basically going out and buying either a single family property, living in that, and then renting out the other rooms to your buddies, or you can go buy a multifamily unit like a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, and you can get in with a minimal amount of 3.5% down using the FHA loan, and then you rent out the other units in that property in order to help pay for your mortgage, if not all of it. If you're already a homeowner and you're just wanting to get into the real estate business, the next thing that I would be focusing on, and that's what I did whenever I first started investing, and that was buying single family rental properties. How I went about this is I stockpiled cash in a high yield savings account. Again, if you guys are looking for a high yield savings account, Public offers that. I have a link down below in the description if you guys want to sign up through them. Right now they're offering 5.1% on all cash you have sitting in their high yield savings accounts. Now, once I had enough money parked in that high yield savings account, I would then start shopping and analyzing properties. Once I found a property that fit my criteria, I would use that money that was sitting in that high yield savings account as a down payment on my first rental property. Now, over time, I would slowly start buying up more properties here and there without getting in too far over my head and without getting over leveraged. Once I got about 5, maybe 6 properties purchased and under my belt in my real estate portfolio, I would then start looking at potentially paying off some of them properties. Now, next up in the real estate category is my personal home. Now, some people will not agree with me on this, but this just makes me sleep better at night. I have videos on this. If you guys want to go hear my more in-depth talks about paying off my personal home mortgage, but that would probably be my next step after acquiring some rental properties, would be focusing on paying off my primary residence to know that that is safe and clear and I fully own that property. Now, last but not least, I wanted to save this for last because this is probably one of the most important things that I would focus on from the very beginning as a new investor. I would be focusing and giving it all that I got into this investment from the very start while paying off that high yield interest debt. And what that investment is my time. Now, guys, instead of sitting on the couch watching Netflix every night or going out to the bar and drinking booze and wasting money, you could be leveraging your time to earning more money. Now, what I mean by that is there's many different ways you can do this. You can spend more time, getting better at your craft, whatever it is you do for your day job, whatever it is that you do to earn money or income for you and your family. You can focus on bettering that, figuring out a way to maybe work some overtime, get a couple projects done a little faster than your boss expected, in hopes that you can earn a promotion or a pay raise or whatever that may be. But make sure you open up that discussion with your employer and understand that they're seeing what you're doing and the work you're putting in to make sure you can potentially get that promotion or pay raise or whatever it is that you're looking for. But next, on top of that, and this is how it has changed my life completely, and I would do the same thing all over again, and that would be focusing my extra time on a side hustle that creates me income. There are many different types of side hustles out there that work. They're proven. There's people that have been able to quit their 9-to-5 jobs in order to pursue their side hustle, me being included. All it takes is time, commitment, and consistency, and you can actually earn a living wage from whatever side hustle you determine to go after. And that's why that would be my number one focus on top of all the other investments I mentioned. Focusing my time on something that's going to generate me more income so I can exponentially grow those investments over the long term. And the biggest misconception that I see whenever people want to go out and start talking about creating a side hustle is that they never do it. So if you actually go out and start your side hustle today, you're going to be much further ahead than your competition.